Hey guys, y'all ready to talk about some gold making? Let's get started. I'm going to do a bit of a commentary video since TSM still has a few kinks to get worked out before I can get back into making guide videos. What we're going to talk about today is I'm going to talk about how my buying and selling an auction house game in general has changed over the past few weeks. Or I guess maybe a week. It seems like it's been so long, but not really. So since the last video, basically what's changed and why. I'm going to give some information on how I feel about the 5 million gold mount. I'm going to talk about what everyone else is talking about, which is the crafting materials deposit, but spoiler alert, I have a different opinion than most people. I like the change, I'll tell you why. And then just some thoughts on gold making community in general and some evolution over time. So let's get right to it. Now, Fade is my main, of course. She has blacksmithing and engineering. She has forever been and always will be an engineer. Blacksmithing came about in late Wrath of the Lich King, I think. But either way, these professions, whether they're good or bad, will be her professions moving forward. And so in the beginning of Legion, because I didn't want to in the beginning of Battle for Azeroth, since I didn't want to log off and mess around with a bunch of different alts, whether it was the best profession to make gold or the worst, blacksmithing and engineering was going to be what I started with. And it went pretty well. Blacksmithing in particular was very profitable. Engineering has the same thing that it often has, in that there really wasn't a whole lot of gold making opportunity, especially early on. As with most other professions, we've of course seen some strange things like I think it's leatherworking can make bows, jewel crafting can make fist weapons. So we've seen some kind of unexpected, I feel, crafts from some professions that previously hadn't been able to make certain types of items. And that stayed true with engineering, which can make, I think, some agility maces and int maces, I think. I don't know, it can make some weapons. But for the most part, that's all it's got to sell. It's also got guns, I think. But, it doesn't have, like, a full suit of armor like most of the other crafting professions. So, and also, all of the stuff that engineering needed to make to sell required expulsum, which in the very beginning I did not have a good source for. So I shifted my thoughts to blacksmithing, which their armor that they can craft does not require expulsum. It's kind of weird with blacksmithing. I didn't notice this with any of the other professions, but with blacksmithing, there's, I think what's called Storm Forged, or maybe Storm Steel, or Storm something, that I can make that requires expulsum and it's item level 300, or I can make the PvP gear, which is also item level 300, which doesn't require expulsum. So I don't know why you would ever make the ones that require expulsum, but though the shield has a great model, but the model drops in Tol Dagor as well. Anyways, so I was focusing on making the PvP item level 300 stuff with Fade, and I was making a lot of gold and still am, but it was, I mean, my gold making capacity was very much limited by that. It's like I could only make as much as people wanted to buy blacksmithing stuff. Also, the stirrups and even more so the hoof plates and even more so the stirrups have been selling very well. The materials are very expensive on my server, but they sell at a pretty high markup as well once you craft with them. So the stirrups in particular, a lot of people like to make their world quests or their general questing a lot more efficient. So those were big sellers for me as well. But you guys know me by now, I'm sure. I don't like to be restrained to a single market. I like to craft all the things, and so I had to bring all of my characters through the portal to Borealis and get their professions trained up. So now I've got my jewel crafter able to make up to the cut epic gems. The very first staff I made, the staffs take like 10 of each of the rare quality gems, and I don't have enough marks of honor to get her high ranks for it. So I was like, this better be freaking worth it. And the first thing I make was a epic procced high haste staff. So I'm like, okay, yeah, it's worth it. And then the next thing I made with her, she's also my leather worker, and I got like an epic proc haste thing on leather. Anyways, things were going great with Wixen, just my jewel crafter leather worker. So I've got my jewel crafter up to be able to craft epic gems, and right now, because so few people can craft the epic gems, I can actually just buy uncut epic gems, cut them, and usually make a 1,500 gold profit, I'd say. They don't move very quickly because a lot of people, of course, they're getting gear, and that gear might have sockets, but they know that they'll probably replace this gear in a few days to a few weeks, so players who don't have a lot of gold aren't going to spend a lot on expensive enchants or gems for gear that they know they're going to replace. Even I don't actually have an epic gem in my gear because it's like, and I can even cut them myself and it's pretty cheap. I just don't have a piece of gear that I'm willing to put an epic gem in yet, you know what I mean? Leatherworking has been a very, very lucrative profession for me to have. Right now, if there's any profession I would recommend someone have, it's leatherworking, simply for the expulsum. So a lot of her job is actually just crafting arm guards for other characters to scrap into expulsum. But I also sell all of the PvP gear for mail and leather, and that sells very well as well. She's probably I would rather have had leatherworking than blacksmithing if I had to choose one. I actually briefly had enchanting on her, and because everyone's been mass crafting enchants to level their enchanting, and then you eventually hit this wall of weapon enchants where you need veiled crystals, and this is a level 110 alt, so it's not like I can go get them easily. I just was not making gold with it, and I really wanted a jewel crafter, so I actually dropped enchanting on that character. I'll pick up enchanting again later, but right now it just was not gonna be worth it for me. So I don't have an enchanter right now. My scribe I have not yet brought through to Borealis, even though I really should. I'm not sure, I've never been a Dark Moon person. That's too big of numbers for me. I like to do simple, small stuff in bulk. So the idea of like trading cards and selling 200,000 gold trinkets, it's just not my thing. I buy those trinkets, don't get me wrong, but I do it to use, not to sell. And I love my trinket, by the way. It drops anchors on people's heads. It's wonderful. So I haven't been doing much with my scribe other than what he's always done, which is just make glyphs and sell them. I do need to bring him out and learn all the glyphs from the Tortolan vendor that I can, because it's easy to just go pick them up. But I haven't done so yet. Today I brought my tailor through thinking I would experience something similar to leatherworking, that I would just be able to maybe, craft a bunch of expulsum via leatherworking for her to use, but then once I did that, I would be able to craft all the cloth PvP gear. And I was surprised to find that the cloth PvP gear takes the deep sea satin as opposed to the tide spray linen. So while with leatherworking, I'm gonna spitball some numbers, but it's just about the scale difference, not the actual numbers. But if I were to make something with leatherworking that cost me 1,000 gold, a similar piece with blacksmithing might cost me 1,500 gold to craft, and by a similar scale, tailoring on my server, that thing would cost me like 5,000 gold to craft, just because the mats are so much more expensive because they take deep sea satin and they take so much of it. And like I said, I don't have enough marks to even bring those ranks down. So I'm not crafting anything with tailoring right now because the mats are just so extensive. I hope that they will actually consider nerfing those materials, because it's not easy to just go out and farm cloth like it is to farm leather. Or you can't just go mining, you can't just go run around in circles and gather cloth like you can with mining. So I hope that they consider nerfing, either switching it to tide spray linen, or making it take significantly less deep sea satin, because even the blacksmithing stuff, it doesn't require uncommon ore, it doesn't require platinum, it requires storm silver. So why does it take the uncommon cloth to make the PvP cloth gear? I don't like it. So hopefully that gets changed. But so I have the tailor up and able to do that. She just doesn't, because it's simply not profitable due to the price of deep sea satin. And I'm doing my usuals. I'm making, the jewel crafting panthers, both of the engineering mounts. I have both a goblin and a gnomish engineer in order to make all the mounts. Let's see here. I'm crafting a few gems to sell, but for the most part, they're still selling at a loss because people are spam cutting them to level their jewel crafting. So I don't do a whole lot of that. Mythic Plus are coming up, so I'm preparing with plenty of invisibility potions from all the different expansions, because of course some people think of Skoggle Drink when they think of invisibility potions, some people think of Draining Invisibility, so I like to have all the different invisibility potions to hit whatever they happen to search for on the auction house. Actually, a surprising source of sales for me has been the crafted gear from Legion. So you're talking your Demon Steel, your Imbued Silk Weave, whatever the other crap was that Leatherworkers made. Gosh, it's been so long. Let's see here. And I do both the like blue quality, like the Lay Stone and the Warhide, as well as the epic versions of that, Dread Leather, that kind of stuff. And the reason for that is because actually, and I do like the chest piece, the shoulders, the pants, things like that, not the bracers, because they actually had some really nice models. If you actually go and look at the, let's see here, not the Imperial set, though I do make the Imperial chest piece because same deal, it's a look-alike for the Paladin PvP tier for the last season of Legion. It looks beautiful. I actually, in fact, endorsement here, it's an award-winning MOG. I won with Trial of Style using that chest piece earlier. So that is a great chess piece for MOG pieces. And then, so a lot of people just want that because the models look really good. And since people are dumping their materials from Legion because they think they're not worth anything anymore, you can make it really cheap. So I've been just like scooping up all of these cheap Legion materials and making the MOG worthy pieces. And they've actually been selling really well. That's what I have been doing for gold making. As far as moving into the future, you'll notice that I didn't say anything about alchemy. I haven't leveled my alchemist at all, which of course, with the raid opening up, I'm sure it's going to make a lot of gold makers freak out. What do you mean you're not going to take advantage of that flask market? Indeed, I'm probably not. It's just not... I've never really been that big into alchemy, especially in early expansions, because herbs are just so expensive. It's viable, absolutely. It's just not something that I've ever really considered one of my... I like to craft gear. I'm not sure why, it's just... I'm more about gear and glyphs than potions and stuff, which I will make them. I just am not in a hurry after hearing all of my guild members complain about anchor wheat. So I'm not doing that, though I will sooner or later. If anything, with regards to preparing for Mythic Plus and the raid opening up, I'll probably actually be looking at doing more with cooking. I've been, of course, taking advantage of every rank 3 world quest, and then I've been trying to buy up cheap midnight salmon as I find it. Cheap being relative, of course. And cooking has actually been one of my favorite high-value markets. Unfortunately, without the Nomi Gate, it sounds like Russiagate or Watergate, but now the Nomi gating of the rank 3 patterns this time around, it's not as difficult for competitors to get into the market. I think that's what kept my cooking so high in Legion, was a lot of people just did not want to deal with what it took to get rank 3 patterns. And so it's a little bit tougher to deal with that this time. But I'm still hoping to be able to make quite a bit of gold from cooking, and I imagine that will be what I do in the early raid as opposed to alchemy. So, what was our next topic? The 5 million gold mount, the Mighty Caravan Brutosaur. I've had mixed feelings about this since the beginning, but the first thing I said was, why would I ever buy this thing? Which technically kind of remains true. I've run 2 accounts since, I believe, late Wrath of the Lich King, if not, then Cataclysm certainly, and so I'd never needed access to the auction house on my main because my main's also an engineer, so I can drop a mailbox wherever I want. Now I actually have 3 mailboxes between being an engineer, having the Argent Squire, and having the stamp whistle from the Postmaster quest. I've got, mailbox access like you wouldn't believe. So why would I ever need this mount? I really felt that the mount, if I ever did buy it, it was just going to be able to show off like, haha, look at me, I've got a 5 million gold mount and you don't. Which is still kind of the case. But when TSM was broken for account syncing, which it no longer is, thank you guys for getting on that and fixing that. It does work for account syncing right now, but maybe 2 days before that got fixed, I just finally got fed up with it and said, fine. If it's not going to be fixed, because of course I didn't know how long it would take to get fixed, for all I knew it was going to be months, I said, fine, if it's not going to be fixed, I'll just buy the damn mount, move all my infrastructure to sell everything on Fade. And I did just that. So I set up Fade to sell, which is actually kind of an interesting thing because now people can whisper me if they see me selling. And now, like Liquidate, I used to troll trade chat quite a bit with Liquidate, and now I can't really I don't have that anonymity. But anyway, so I moved all of my infrastructure to Fade. And of course, then the auction, or then TSM got fixed, and I was like, God damn it. But either way, I did have this mount. And it's been an interesting situation because what they don't tell you about having this mount is a lot of people feel entitled to use your mount. I have gotten some of the rudest whispers I can ever remember in World of Warcraft from having this mount and not standing still, from dismounting when someone wanted to use my mount, from accidentally interrupting someone's scan by daring to go to the mission table. People seem to think that I'm there to be their portable auction house, and they can piss off as far as I'm concerned. The amount of flack I get from not standing still for strangers because they want me to be their auction house because they're too damn lazy to go through the portal to Stormwind, despite the fact that they can literally port right back immediately afterwards, is ridiculous. I actually will usually eject the auctioneer now. As if I'm not using it, I will eject the auctioneer. If I am using it, I will literally leave town and go hide behind a building in hopes that people don't bother me. I wish I hadn't bought this, though at the same time it is kind of nice to be like, haha, I have a 5 million gold mountain, you don't. That said, it's so big that it's inconvenient. Like, you shouldn't use it in island expeditions because you can't ride off the boat with it. You get stuck. You can't go through the gates in Borealis. It's a absolute pain in the ass. So I don't recommend it to anyone who doesn't already have one. Just don't. It's more trouble than it's worth. That said, it's kind of an interesting thing that, of course, I mean, it'll come as no surprise to any of us, I'm sure, that Blizzard is trying to curb inflation. And I'm actually really surprised at just how aggressively they're attempting to do this. Because, of course, the 5 million gold mount is a clear attempt to curb inflation. Let's suck 5 million gold from players that have 5 million gold, get that out of server economies. And then, of course, as we've seen from mission tables, in Legion, we can all remember when you could easily get 2,000 gold from running a mission on your mission table, and now you'll be lucky to get 100. And World Quests, similarly very cheap. And of course, the biggest thing, I think that's going to have the biggest long-term impact throughout the entire server economy, is the scrapper. Because now, all the non-enchanters aren't vendoring gear, they're scrapping it. So they're not creating that gold that comes when you vendor an item. So I think that we're going to see a really steep decline in the amount of gold, and we might end up, as a result, seeing a decline in the prices that we can demand for items. In that regard, time will tell, but it will be interesting to watch moving forward given how aggressively they're attacking the problem of inflation. On that note, let's go ahead and move on to the crafting mats deposit, because it's actually, when you think about it, somewhat related. Though I don't think that curbing inflation was their main goal with it, it does kind of do that. If people are losing more gold to deposit costs, that takes gold out of the economy. So I don't think that was the goal, but that's just one more way that inflation is being somewhat curbed. But we won't talk about its impact on inflation because, quite frankly, I don't care to think that detailed about it all. But let's just talk about the deposit fee in general. I actually have a different opinion than most gold makers in that not only do I not really care, but in general, if I had to decide how I felt about it, I would say I generally like the change. And I think you have to really understand what I do to make gold as a result. I don't flip materials, I don't farm. What do? I buy materials from other players, I craft with them, and I sell it. So the stuff that I post on the auction house isn't going to be impacted because it's a crafted piece. Where I am going to see an impact is when I buy things from players, and I cannot tell you the amount of times I've gone off in guild chat about how much I hate it when people put up stacks of one. This is anything that would keep people from putting up stacks of one is going to make me as an individual very happy. I cannot stand that. And so if this incentivizes players putting up larger stacks, I'm all for it. And if it keeps people from putting up things at all because they can't afford this higher deposit cost, well, I'm also the person in my server who barks in trade chat. And in fact, this actually helps me because now rather than just saying, hey, sell it to me because you might lose this tiny deposit cost, now I can say, hey, you want to avoid these exorbitant deposit costs that Blizzard's brought about? How about you offer it to me instead? I'll pay you market price for it, usually a little bit less than market price, obviously, that's why I bark in the first place. But it actually incentivizes players to sell to me through trade at a discount so that they are guaranteed to not have to lose that deposit cost. It's great for me. And for players who don't like me or have me on ignore because my alt's been barking for trade goods for 6 or 7 years now, well, they might put stuff up on the auction house for significantly less than the going price just to make sure it gets sold. Something's going for 10 gold a piece. Maybe you put it up for 8 just to make sure it sells and you don't lose your deposit. I'll be happy to grab those on Sniper, no problem. Because of the nature of what I do to make gold, the fact that I buy crafting mats instead of selling them, the fact that I craft goods only and then I sell those instead, that makes this change really, really nice for me. However, I think that other gold makers have made excellent points on why it is generally a bad change or at best a misguided change. I think that they're right. I just, as an individual, don't care that much. You know what I mean? One of the better videos, not that I've seen any that are bad, but one of the videos that I enjoyed the most with regards to hearing people's thoughts on the auction house deposit changes was from Reckles at Want to Buy Gold. I will link, just in case there's one of you out there who doesn't already follow him, I will link it in the comments for this video. I think he had some really great points. I'm not going to address them because there's nothing to address. I think they're great points. But that's my ham-handed segue into the next section of this little video, which is kind of the idea of just a little bit of a retrospective, if you will. So let's do that real quick. I'll explain as we go along. Back when WoW first was a thing, back when people were first stepping into Molten Core and such, you would have 40-man raids, and some people wouldn't even be level capped. Add-ons weren't really a thing like they are now. You certainly wouldn't go to Icy Veins and figure out your best spec. There really wasn't one spec that was prescribed for the role you were doing. Everyone was just kind of fumbling around in the dark trying to figure out how to play this game. And over time, we as a player base have begun optimizing and running sims and creating websites that all tell people how to play. And we've determined that there are actually best ways to do things mathematically. We as players tend to optimize whatever we're doing in the game via add-ons, via figuring out, using the community resources to all work together to figure out what's best, things of that nature. And something that's been really interesting for me just in recent time has been how we've applied this to gold making. I won't rehash my history of how I got into gold making and how I've seen, gold making go from one blog to a multitude of blogs to then streaming kind of started coming, getting a thing. Now there's a little bit more with videos, things like that. That's a whole big story. But what was interesting to me is I needed Expulsum this week, and I knew that there was a way, I knew that there was going to be some sort of shuffle to craft them, and I needed to figure out a price string in TSM that was going to help me properly value my Expulsum and also figure out how to make it. And I knew that it was going to have to do with sharding arm guards. I didn't know if it was going to be leatherworking or tailoring. Turns out it's leatherworking. And what I did was, well, first I went on a Discord and I asked and no one knew. But then I saw that Reckles was online and I've got him on my friends list. And I'm like, if anyone knows the answer to this question, he would. So I sent him a tell. And I asked him, hey, how many, do you have to know how much Expulsum you get for, per race or shard? And he just instantly was like 1 to 6. I'm like, thank God, someone knows. And then he went and started talking to me about how much people have optimized this particular shimmer scale and bone farming spot. And I can't even remember what he explained to me, but it had to do with very specific specs of, having a group of these certain classes and certain specs in order to maximize the amount of skinning that could be done. I'm sure he has videos on his channel about it. I wouldn't say I tuned out because it's not that I didn't care. It's just my brain went fuzzy because farming is not and will never be my thing. So it was kind of like, oh yeah, I understand the basic concepts of what you're talking about, but I can't really get that engaged because it's not my thing. You know what I mean? But I was still, even though I wasn't really following exactly what he was talking about, I was floored by the fact that there's all these people out there optimizing a farming spot for blood-stained bones to sell or to craft Expulsum. And this is really kind of that point that the rest of the game has kind of reached about raiding or Mythic Plus. The gold-making community is at this point where we're all working together and we're fine-tuning little gold-making attributes. I mean, we've always, for years now, especially over at the consortium forums, there have been people, working together to, alright, I've prospected 5,000 ore, here's the stats, please someone make a spreadsheet. It's that was always kind of a thing, but that was still a really small subset of players, like really, really small. Like I can count them on like my fingers kind of small as far as the people who are actually contributing to that. And now it's like this crowdsourced gold making community. And even for, like, I don't give a damn about farming. I love that other people do because they're farming up the mats that I'm going to buy. And I love you guys for it. Please post them in stacks of 200 to make it easier on both of us. But I love that we've come to this point that people are working together and are figuring out these like super duper fine tuned strategies for whatever they're doing. I love that, you know, whatever we're doing, we're going to do it the best we can possibly do it. And that's wonderful. I just thought that was kind of a cool thing that struck me when he was talking to me about that. I'm like, damn, people are awesome. So on that note, I think that that's where we'll leave it, is that people are awesome. The gold making community is awesome. I hope you guys are having an awesome week. I hope that you guys are looking forward to the raid. I will not be raiding. I might be doing some Mythic Plus. Actually, I might go into raid. We'll see how I'm feeling on Tuesday night. We'll see if they need me. My guild is inundated with melee, and they don't need me to tank, so who knows? Maybe I'll just fish all night. Find out. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great day.